The story follows Nathan Wright, a billionaire tech mogul, who encounters a former employee, Daniel Hayes, now homeless, after being laid off. The tale explores the stark disparity between corporate success and the devastating impact of layoffs on workers. It delves into the infuriating realities of a system that abandons dedicated employees like Daniel, stripping them of dignity and stability. The narrative also examines societal biases, hinting at systemic inequalities and prejudices that exacerbate the struggles of those most affected. Through Daniel's plight, the story exposes the unsettling human cost of unchecked economic progress and corporate decisions. Nathan Wright sat in the back seat of his sleek electric sedan, absently tapping his fingers against the armrest. His eyes were fixed on the cityscape zipping by, a blur of towering glass structures, neon signs, and endless streams of people. His thoughts churned restlessly. In just a few hours, he would deliver a keynote at one of the most prestigious tech conferences in the world. The stakes were high. He wasn't just announcing updates for Ion Drive, his groundbreaking energy company, or Aeronova, his ambitious space exploration venture. This was a chance to solidify his legacy as a pioneer, a visionary leading humanity into the future. "Are you ready, sir?" A voice interrupted his reverie. It was Sarah, his assistant, turning around from the passenger seat with a thick binder in her hands. It contained everything he needed for the speech: talking points, data slides, and projections. Nathan gave a distracted nod, his gaze still focused on the blur of the outside world. The hum of the car's engine was barely audible as it glided smoothly through the bustling streets. Suddenly, his attention snagged on someone, by the roadside. His eyes narrowed. Among the faceless crowd stood a figure, a gaunt man holding a ragged piece of cardboard. The words scrawled in uneven, almost desperate handwriting caught Nathan's eye. "Fired from Ion Drive. Need help." Nathan straightened in his seat, his jaw tightening. The man's sun-weathered face and hollow eyes spoke of a hardship that went far beyond the sign he held. Something about the scene stirred a mix of curiosity and unease in him. "Stop the car," Nathan ordered, breaking the silence. The driver hesitated, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. "Sir, we're on a tight schedule, and this area—" "I said stop the car," Nathan interrupted, his tone firm. The vehicle eased to a halt, followed by the convoy of security SUVs behind them. Passers-by turned their heads, some recognizing the influential tech mogul and pulling out their phones to snap pictures. "Sir, this isn't a good idea," Sarah said, her voice low but urgent. "We're already late, and the crowd—" Nathan was already stepping out of the car. He approached the man on the sidewalk, his expensive shoes crunching lightly against the concrete. The man stiffened, clearly startled, as he realized who was walking toward him. His fingers clutched the edges of his cardboard sign more tightly. Nathan stopped a few feet away, giving the man space. His tone was calm but direct. "I'm Nathan Wright. What's your name, and what happened to bring you here?" The man blinked, his tired eyes darting between Nathan and the small crowd that was beginning to gather. For a moment, he seemed unsure if this was real. I'm Daniel," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel Hayes. I used to work for Ion Drive." Nathan's brows furrowed. "Go on," he said, his voice encouraging but firm. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I worked at your Dallas plant maintenance technician. I kept the machines running, made sure everything was smooth on the production line. It wasn't just a job, it was my pride, but—" He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. "After the layoffs, I lost everything. I tried to find work, but no one would hire me. They said I didn't have the right skills, or that I was overqualified. I ran out of savings, lost my apartment. Then—" He looked down, his voice breaking. "My wife left, took our kids with her, said she couldn't do it anymore." Nathan's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. He could feel the weight of Daniel's words, the years of struggle and humiliation packed into a few sentences. Daniel held up the battered sign. This is all I have left. A sign in a corner on the street. I just want someone to see me, to hear me. That's all." The crowd around them had grown, their murmurs a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Phones were pointed at the pair, capturing every moment. An assistant stepped up beside Nathan and whispered urgently, "Sir, we really need to leave. This area isn't safe, and we're drawing too much attention." Nathan didn't budge. His gaze stayed locked on Daniel. If he has the courage to stand here with that sign, the least I can do is listen. Turning back to Daniel, Nathan asked, "Do you have somewhere to stay?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded faintly. "An abandoned building. Not far from here. It's not much, but it's shelter." His voice wavered, embarrassment evident. "Show me," Nathan said, surprising even himself. He placed a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Lead the way." The onlookers whispered louder as Nathan and Daniel began walking side by side. The convoy of vehicles stayed parked, and the tech mogul's security team followed at a respectful distance. The cameras didn't stop rolling. Daniel led Nathan through narrow alleys littered with trash and broken glass. The glimmering cityscape seemed miles away, replaced by cracked asphalt, graffiti-covered walls, and the pungent smell of neglect. Finally, they reached a dilapidated warehouse. Daniel pushed open a rusted metal door, its hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the scene was bleak. Daniel had carved out a small corner for himself, using cardboard and scraps of tarp to create makeshift walls. A threadbare mattress lay on the floor, surrounded by a few plastic bags stuffed with belongings. A dented metal can served as a stove, next to a nearly empty container of canned soup. Nathan surveyed the space in silence, the sharp contrast between his polished world of innovation and the stark reality of Daniel's existence hit him harder than he expected. Daniel sank onto the mattress, his hands clutching the cardboard sign like it was a lifeline. 6 months, he said quietly, answering a question Nathan hadn't asked. "Maybe longer. I thought it would be temporary, just until I got back on my feet, but..." He gestured vaguely at the room around him. "This is what life became." Nathan crouched beside him, unbothered by the grime on the floor. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice low but resolute. Daniel hesitated, then began. He spoke of late nights spent fixing machines at Ion Drive, of the pride he felt in his work. He spoke of the layoffs, the rejection letters, the friends who stopped answering his calls. He spoke of his wife, her patience wearing thin as their bank account emptied, and the day she finally packed up and left. His voice cracked as he described the last time he saw his kids, waving at him from the back seat of her car. "I tried," Daniel said, his voice trembling. "I tried so hard, but no one cared. No one would give me a chance." Nathan listened, his jaw tight. For the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of his decisions, not as a leader, but as a human being. He thought of all the Daniels in the world, invisible in the shadows of progress. "You deserve better," Nathan said finally, his voice steady. "Everyone does, and I can't fix the past, but I can help now." Daniel blinked, his expression one of disbelief. "You mean that?" Nathan nodded. "But I need your help too. I need to understand, not just your story, but the stories of others like you. I want to know how this happened, and how we can stop it from happening again." Outside, the murmurs of his team grew louder, their footsteps echoing as they approached the warehouse. But Nathan didn't move. For him, time had stopped. This wasn't just a moment, it was a turning point. "Your story doesn't end here," Nathan Wright said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence of the dimly lit warehouse. Daniel Hayes looked up at him, the faintest flicker of light returning to his eyes, a fragile spark of hope that had long been extinguished. The crumbling walls of the abandoned building loomed around them, a grim reminder of how far Daniel had fallen. The air inside was suffocating, heavy with the stench of mildew and rotting debris. Nathan's assistants, standing a few feet away, exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort evident. One wrinkled their nose and whispered something, but Nathan remained unshaken. His sharp gaze swept the desolate interior, taking in every detail of the makeshift shelters cobbled together by those who had nowhere else to go. "This way," Daniel said, leading Nathan deeper into the warehouse. They passed clusters of battered belongings, blankets draped over broken furniture, bags stuffed with unwashed clothes, and piles of refuse that had accumulated over months, maybe years. At the very back, In a dark corner away from the few beams of light that filtered through cracks in the roof, Daniel stopped. "This is where I've been staying," he said quietly. His hand gestured to a tiny space barely large enough to lie down in. It was bordered by torn pieces of cardboard and tattered plastic sheets. A stained, threadbare mattress rested directly on the cold concrete, surrounded by scattered cans and a small bag containing all of Daniel's possessions. His shoulders hunched, and his eyes dropped to the floor, as if expecting judgment. Nathan knelt to examine the space, his expression unreadable. He remained silent, though a storm of emotions churned beneath the surface. In the quiet, Daniel reached into a faded canvas bag, pulling out a small plastic pouch. He untied it with deliberate care, as though it held his most precious belongings. From the pouch, Daniel retrieved 2 items, a crumpled letter of employment verification and a worn photograph. He hesitated for a moment before handing the picture to Nathan. It showed a younger, healthier Daniel, standing proudly beside his wife and 2 children, in front of a gleaming Ion Drive Terravolt sedan. Their faces radiated joy, their smiles full of promise. Nathan took the photo, studying it intently. He didn't just see a family, he saw the pride in Daniel's eyes, the belief that he had been contributing to something greater. For a long moment, Nathan said nothing. Then Daniel broke the silence, his voice rough and uneven. "This is all I have left," he said, gesturing to the photo. "Every time I look at it, I remind myself that things were good once. But after I lost my job, everything fell apart. I couldn't protect my family from the fallout. The savings ran out, the rent went unpaid, and we were evicted." His voice trembled. "My wife tried to stick it out, but eventually, she took the kids and left. I don't blame her. She just wanted to give them a chance at a better life." Daniel's hand tightened around the edges of the photograph. "I don't want pity, and I'm not here to point fingers. I know the company had to make cuts. But no matter what I did, no one would give me another chance. It was like I just didn't exist anymore." Nathan looked up, his eyes steady. "Do you want to see your family again?" he asked, his tone resolute. Daniel froze, the question catching him off guard. His voice faltered as he answered, "Of course I do. But I don't know if they'd want to see me." Nathan rose to his feet, his expression firm. "Then let's find out." Turning to his team, he barked instructions with precision. "Get him temporary housing. Today, a clean, safe place with a real bed and a hot meal. This man cannot spend another night here." One of his assistants hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, we're already behind schedule. The keynote can wait," Nathan interrupted sharply. His voice carried a weight of authority that brooked no argument. "Daniel cannot." Another assistant scrambled to make calls, rushing toward the warehouse exit. Nathan remained focused on Daniel. "This is just the start. We're going to get you the help you need. Not just tonight, but for the long term. And not just you. I want to understand how many others are in the same position." Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed the head of Ion Drive's Human Resources Department. "I need a list of all employees impacted by the layoffs. Every single one. I want to know where they are, how they're doing, and whether they've received any form of support from us. If they haven't, we'll fix that, immediately." On the other end, the HR lead hesitated. "That's a tall order, sir. Compiling that information will take—" "I'm not interested in excuses," Nathan cut in. "This is a priority. Get it done." He hung up and turned back to Daniel. "You don't just need a place to sleep. You need a path forward. I'll make sure you have one. But you need to meet me halfway. This isn't just about helping you. It's about giving a voice to everyone who feels invisible." Daniel nodded, though his face betrayed his disbelief. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" Nathan placed a steady hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Because no one's a failure for falling down. It's only failure if you stay down. You fought to survive this long, Daniel. You have strength, and that strength can inspire others." A black Ion Drive SUV pulled up outside the warehouse. 2 assistants guided Daniel into the vehicle, reassuring him that he would be taken to a nearby hotel. For the first time in months, Daniel would sleep on a real bed and eat a hot meal. When he arrived at the hotel, he was overwhelmed by the pristine room. A staff member placed a tray in front of him. Roast chicken, steamed vegetables, and a tall glass of fresh orange juice. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Daniel stared at the plate, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I never thought anyone would see me again," he whispered to himself. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Nathan had already moved on to the next phase of his plan. "Contact legal and psychological support teams," he instructed his staff. "Make sure Daniel has everything he needs to reconnect with his family and find out where they are. I want to know if his wife is open to a meeting. If she is, arrange a reunion. Family is the foundation for recovery." His team worked quickly, confirming that Daniel's wife and children were living in a small town a few hours away. Nathan issued clear orders to ensure the reunion was handled delicately, with respect for everyone involved. But Nathan's vision extended far beyond helping Daniel. "We need to establish a reintegration program for everyone affected by Ion Drive's layoffs," he told his team. "Reskilling, career counseling, financial assistance, whatever it takes, these people helped build this company. It's time we returned the favor." Later that night, Daniel sat by the hotel window, staring at the city lights. For the first time in months, the darkness in his life didn't feel absolute. A tiny glimmer of hope had begun to grow, and it carried the promise of something more. Daniel Hayes sat in the quiet of the hotel room, staring at the photograph of his family in his hands. His fingers traced the edges of the worn picture, as if holding on to it could bring back everything he'd lost. "Maybe," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible, "I'll have a chance to make things right." Meanwhile, Nathan Wright rode home in his electric sedan, the hum of the engine blending with the city's muffled sounds. Streetlights painted streaks of light across his face as he gazed out the window, lost in thought. He knew today's actions were just the beginning. A single act of compassion might not solve every problem, but it had the power to transform a life, and sometimes, through that, to spark change across the world. As darkness settled over the city, a 2-minute video began to ripple across social media. It captured the moment Nathan Wright, one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the world, paused on a bustling street to speak with a homeless man holding a cardboard sign that read, "Fired from Ion Drive, need help." In the video, Nathan's voice was calm but resolute. "No one deserves to be forgotten," he said, placing a steady hand on Daniel's shoulder. "I will help you." The video, filmed by a passerby, was shared online with the caption, "Even the busiest man in the world stops to listen." Within hours, it exploded across platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The video amassed millions of views, with hashtags like "Our Hope for Workers" and "Our Listen Like," Nathan dominating the trending charts. The outpouring of emotion was immediate and overwhelming. Comments flooded in, reflecting admiration for Nathan's actions. Nathan Wright reminded us what true leadership looks like. Compassion is not a weakness, it's a responsibility. I've been where Daniel is now, unemployed, ignored, and hopeless. This video gives me the strength to keep going. Personal stories began to pour in. A single mother from Seattle shared how she had struggled after losing her job, saying, "It's incredible to see someone with Nathan's influence take action. Maybe there's still hope for people like me." Major corporations took notice too. Tech giants like Luminar Tech and Novanet announced new initiatives aimed at supporting laid-off workers. These included free retraining programs to help employees transition into new industries, short-term financial aid for those in dire need, access to mental health services to cope with the stress and trauma of unemployment. Even smaller businesses and local organizations joined the movement, organizing job fairs and launching community-driven aid programs. Public figures added their voices to the growing conversation. A famous musician tweeted, "We can't change the world overnight, but we can change someone's world today." Nathan Wright just proved that. While the world buzzed with this unexpected story, Daniel sat in the comfort of the hotel room Nathan had arranged for him. The warmth of the space felt almost surreal after months of living in the cold and damp corners of an abandoned warehouse. Watching the viral video of his encounter with Nathan, Daniel couldn't hold back his tears. He scrolled through the comments beneath the video, reading messages of encouragement and solidarity. One private message stood out. "Thank you, Daniel. I'm also struggling to find work, and every day feels like a battle. But because of you, I know it's worth fighting. Stay strong." Daniel set his phone down, his hands trembling. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt seen. He wasn't just a man with a cardboard sign anymore. He was a symbol of hope. Nathan's commitment to helping Daniel didn't end with temporary shelter. He had already set plans in motion for a full recovery program to rebuild Daniel's life. Within days, Ion Drive's HR team designed a customized training initiative for him, aimed at equipping him with modern technical skills while restoring the confidence he'd lost. When Daniel arrived at Ion Drive's training facility, he felt an overwhelming sense of apprehension. The sleek, futuristic environment stood in stark contrast to the life he'd known over the past year. The advanced machinery, automated production lines, and bustling activity made him feel like an outsider in a world he no longer belonged to. A program advisor noticed his hesitation and approached with a reassuring smile. "Daniel, you're here to start over, and we're here to help you every step of the way. Nathan believes in you, and so do we." Encouraged, Daniel began attending classes. The program introduced him to cutting-edge skills, from managing robotic systems to troubleshooting advanced circuitry. But progress wasn't easy. His hands, once adept at manual labor, struggled with the precision required for modern technology. Mistakes were frequent, and frustration often threatened to overwhelm him. Despite the challenges, Daniel refused to give up his classmates. Initially curious about the man who had captured global attention, grew supportive. A young technician named Ravi, known for his technical prowess, took a particular interest in helping him. "We all start somewhere," Ravi said one evening after class. "Don't worry about how far you have to go. Just focus on getting a little better every day." Gradually, Daniel began to improve. His persistence paid off as he started completing tasks with increasing confidence. During a hands-on session, he even suggested a minor adjustment to the production line that impressed his instructors. One afternoon, during a routine training session, Nathan made an unannounced visit to the facility. The room fell silent as he entered, his presence commanding yet unassuming. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Daniel, who was hunched over a circuit board, deeply focused. Nathan waited quietly, observing. When Daniel finally looked up and saw him, he froze, startled. Before Daniel could speak, Nathan approached and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I've always believed in you," he said with a warm smile. "But I want to hear it from you. How do you feel?" Daniel looked down, gathering his thoughts. Finally, he raised his eyes to meet Nathan's. "I still have a lot to learn," he admitted, his voice steady. "But I'm not giving up. I owe it to myself, and my family, to keep going." Nathan's smile widened. "That's all I needed to hear. Keep moving forward, Daniel. This is just the beginning." Weeks later, Daniel received an invitation to an Ion Drive event, honoring outstanding trainees and employees. It felt surreal. For a man who had once been invisible to the world, this recognition marked not just a professional milestone, but a personal triumph. As Daniel prepared for the event, he stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the collar of a new shirt provided by the program. For the first time in years, he saw a version of himself he could be proud of, a man who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Daniel Hayes stood at the entrance of the grand hall, overwhelmed by the sea of bright lights and the buzz of conversation that filled the space. Applause erupted as Nathan Wright walked onto the stage, commanding attention, with his calm, yet authoritative presence. Daniel lingered near the back, feeling out of place amidst the glittering decor and polished crowd. But when Nathan began speaking, his words seemed to reach directly to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan began, his voice resonating across the vast hall. "Ion Drive is not just a technology company. It's a community that thrives because of the people who build it, shape it, and sustain it. And as a community, we cannot leave anyone behind today. I want to share a story that has changed my life, and I hope will inspire all of you." He turned his gaze toward Daniel, his eyes encouraging and warm. Before Daniel could process what was happening, the doors at the back of the hall swung open. A woman entered, holding the hands of two young children. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was his wife, Emily, and their kids, Ben and Sophie. "Daddy, Daddy!" the children shouted, their voices cutting through the silence. They broke free from their mother's hands and ran toward Daniel, their small arms outstretched. Daniel dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he embraced them tightly. He buried his face in their hair, his body trembling with emotion. Emily approached, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her eyes glistened with tears, but they held no anger, only understanding. "You don't have to apologize," she whispered, her voice steady despite her emotion. "You've always tried. You've always loved us. And now, you're here. That's all that matters." The hall, which had fallen completely silent, erupted into applause. The sound grew, rippling through the audience like a wave of shared emotion. It wasn't just for Nathan's speech or Daniel's reunion. It was for the profound reminder of resilience, forgiveness, and second chances. Later, as the event continued, Nathan invited Daniel to the stage. Nervously, Daniel stepped forward, his hands trembling as he gripped the edges of the podium. His voice cracked as he began, but the determination in his words carried through. "I lost everything," he said. "My job, my home, my family, even my faith in myself. But Nathan Wright didn't give up on me. He gave me a second chance, and because of him, I've started to rebuild my life. I found my family again. I don't have the words to thank him or the people who've supported me. All I can promise is this: I will work harder than ever to make the most of this opportunity." Applause filled the room once more as Daniel stepped back. For a man who had once believed his story was over, this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him, but for countless others inspired by his journey. Daniel's story quickly spread within Ion Drive and beyond, becoming a symbol of perseverance and the transformative power of compassion. Inspired by his journey, Nathan launched a new initiative, the Rebuild Program, designed to support former employees and struggling workers worldwide. In a televised interview, Nathan spoke candidly. "Daniel Hayes isn't just one story. He's a testament to what's possible when we choose to act. There are thousands, millions, of people like him who deserve the chance to rebuild their lives. It's our responsibility, not just as businesses, but as human beings, to create those opportunities." Nathan's words were followed by action. The Rebuild Program introduced a series of initiatives to help displaced workers: emergency financial aid, short-term grants to cover essential expenses such as rent, utilities, and medical bills for workers facing economic crises. Skill development programs, free courses in cutting-edge technologies like robotics, renewable energy, and data analytics, as well as training in soft skills like communication and leadership. Mental health support, access to counselors and support groups to help workers navigate the emotional toll of job loss. These efforts expanded into a larger movement as Nathan partnered with other tech giants to create the Second Start Network, a collaborative platform connecting displaced workers to job opportunities, training resources, and community support. Nathan's vision extended beyond the corporate world. Inspired by Daniel's story, Ion Drive launched several community-focused initiatives. Affordable housing projects, partnering with local organizations. Ion Drive funded the construction of eco-friendly homes, equipped with solar power, reducing living costs for low-income families. Food security programs. In major cities, Ion Drive supported soup kitchens and food banks, ensuring thousands of meals were provided to those in need. STEM education scholarships. Scholarships for children from economically disadvantaged families, focusing on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to empower the next generation. These efforts resonated far and wide. Communities praised the programs, and other companies began adopting similar models, creating a ripple effect of positive change. Months later, Nathan stood on a stage at an international summit in Geneva. The audience consisted of world leaders, CEOs, and humanitarians. This wasn't a speech about technology or business. It was about responsibility. "We live in an age of incredible innovation," Nathan began. "But as we race forward, we must ask ourselves, who are we leaving behind?" The room was silent as he continued. Daniel Hayes was not a failure. He was a man who worked hard, loved his family, and contributed to his community. But when the system changed, he was left behind. He didn't just lose his job. He lost everything, his home, his family, and his sense of self. That's not just his story, it's the story of millions. Behind him, a screen displayed a video montage of Daniel's journey, from standing on a street corner with his cardboard sign, to reuniting with his family and thriving at Ion Drive. The audience watched intently. Many moved to tears. Nathan turned back to the crowd. This isn't about one man, it's about all of us. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future, and it starts with small acts. A meal, a conversation, a chance. These things matter. Together, they can change the world. The hall erupted into applause as the video ended, displaying a single powerful message. Change begins with one step. Take it. At the back of the hall, Daniel sat quietly with Emily and their children. Watching the video, he barely recognized the man on the screen. He wasn't just a man who had been given a second chance. He was now someone who could inspire others to believe in their own potential. After the speech, Nathan invited Daniel onto the stage. As Daniel faced the audience, he took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. If someone like me can turn their life around, so can anyone. You don't have to change the whole world, just someone's world. That's enough. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, their applause a resounding commitment to the message of compassion and action